comments, and after that, Councilman Coleman will give the invocation. And I would like to ask him during the invocation if he would include something about this violence that's going around Edenton, just include that in it, in the town of Edenton itself. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. O God of all creation, that spirit which calls us to live together in just and loving relationships. We gather on this Valentine's Day, a day filled with many words of love. And yet our world, even our community, is one increasingly torn apart by violence and injury. May we as leaders find ways to make the words of love visible. May we speak with understanding for those who suffer and need comforting. May we reach out with protection for those who are fearful and at risk. May we all work together for a community that seeks peace and unity. As we come together this evening, we ask that your loving spirit be present in our midst. Help us to make decisions that reflect the just and loving relationships to which we have all been called. Let us bend to ways of compassion rather than to ways of convenience. Let us be considerate of each other. Let us find forgiveness in our hearts for wrongs committed. Wrap all of us this day in your love, that we may love as abundantly as you have loved us. This we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, now we'll have the approval of the minutes for our special meeting on January the 23rd, our regular meeting on January the 10th, and our closed session meeting on January the 10th, all in 2023.
I didn't see anything wrong with these minutes, and I'm going to make a motion that we approve them as
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, the next we have a proclamation here. Is Lorianne here?
Yeah, she's over here. Yeah, she's over here.
Oh, I couldn't see her. We have a special proclamation for Lorianne. Come on up. I didn't see you come in. Okay. All right, this is a proclamation of appreciation for Lorianne Curtin. Whereas Lorianne Curtin has served the town of Edenton in a variety of leadership roles, including membership on the Habitat and Humanity Board of Directors. Whereas Ms. Curtin has consistently championed her North Edenton neighborhood. And whereas Ms. Curtin has been an active member of the town of Edenton Board of Adjustments for 17 years, a board responsible for helping oversee applications for variances, conditional use permits, and other quasi-judicial matters. And whereas during the past 10 years, Ms. Curtin has served faithfully as chairperson of the Board of Adjustments. Now be it resolved that the Edenton Town Council does hereby express its appreciation to Ms. Curtin for her length of dedication and her valuable service to the town of Edenton. Signed this 14th day of February 2023 by Jimmy Stallings as mayor and Corey Glidden as town manager. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have another presentation, the James C. Robinson Memorial Bench Marker, and Dick Mayer, you're on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to appear before you this evening. It's always a pleasure to talk to the town council. I appear this evening on behalf of the Chowan County Republican Executive Committee in support of our request that we be allowed to purchase a bench and erect a memorial plaque to Jim Roberson, an individual who has contributed so much to our community over the years. Upon his death, the committee voted to create this memorial, and we have been pursuing it with Town Manager Gooden for several months. By way of Jim's background, he came to Edenton in 1982 after 20 years of service in the United States Navy as an officer. He served honorably and retired very happily to our community. Jim organized and started the Edenton Habitat for Humanity program in 1992. He served as chairman of the Edenton Rotary Club and was a longstanding and active member of St. Paul's Parish. He also organized and served as chairman of the County Republican Party for 19 years. The committee felt that in view, this next slide if we may please, the committee felt that in view of his naval service, it would be appropriate that any memorial to him should take the form of a plaque in Edenton's Park. The following slides depict the bench we would like to acquire. Next slide, please. Here's the bench, which currently sits on the waterfront. It's the middle bench right on the waterfront in Colonial Park. The next slide depicts the proposed wording for the plaque that we would affix to that bench in memory of James C. Robeson, et cetera, et cetera. He was a positive presence in Edenton and Chowan County and certainly made this world a better place. The next slide, please. The plaque will be made of bronze and measure approximately 3 inches high by 12 inches wide. It will be affixed to the top rail of that bench by hidden tamper resistance hardware. Based on our discussions with the town manager, we would propose to reimburse the town the sum of $648, which was the cost of erecting the bench. Our committee would be responsible for the cost of purchasing and installing the plaque on that bench. Next slide, please. Specifically, our proposal would respectfully request that the town council accept the sum of $648 from the Chowan County Republican Executive Committee as reimbursement for the cost associated with the erection of the middle bench on the waterfront. And secondly, ownership of the bench at that point be assigned to the Chowan County Republican Executive Committee. Thereafter, we would affix the bronze memorial plaque as we have described earlier. And thereafter, we would be responsible for all maintenance of the bench in a manner consistent with other benches in the park. That, in a nutshell, is our proposal, and I thank you for listening and considering that proposal. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Anyone have any questions of Mr. Mayor on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed with this.
So move, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one thing to add, Mayor. What made this request unique, when Mr. Mayor and I had first started this conversation, the town had been working very hard to add some new benches to the majority of our parks. Typically, a request like this would come in the purchase installation of the memorial bench. but we were able to come to an agreement on the town's cost for this bench, similar to if the group had approached us to purchase and install. So the cost that you see here is complete reimbursement back to the town, just like any other group would come forward and actually purchase the bench and we would install. What made this unique is that benches had been installed, and so that's the one.
Mayor, I just want to say, Jim Robinson's most deserving of this. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
He would be proud, too.
I hope so.
Well, he definitely did a lot in this area to move things forward, especially with Habitat for Humanity.
Yes.
And he did a wonderful job in that. Stayed busy. So, any further comments?
I've just got one question. Except for the fact the bench was already there and they're reimbursing it for us, is this being installed, maintained, owned as similar other benches have been out there? There's nothing different about the
Yes, sir.
the arrangement.
That's correct. The only thing unique about this is the fact that the bench was already installed.
Okay.
The two memorial benches that I can, one most recently presented, Captain Mark, for the naval bench here along the front. That's owned and maintained by the entity that purchases it, as well as the additional bench that's in front of Colonial Park between the playground area and the lighthouse entrance. So, yes, it is common.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now we'll move into our committee reports, and the first one is our administration committee, chaired by Councilman High.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. We have 5 items that we need to present tonight. Item number 1 is a Confederate monument update, and the update on that issue is fairly simple. At this point in time, we have our attorney scheduled at the end of the meeting to go into closed session to discuss with us the status of the litigation and also the status of settlement negotiations, and based on whatever he tells us, we may have some request of him to go back to the plaintiffs in terms of further settlement offers from us. So at this point in time, and again, in light of the fact that it is in litigation, our comments are brief on that, and we'll consult with our attorney in closed session over that litigation. The second item is a Town of Edenton 2023 vision statement. We've had the opportunity several times to take a look at this, including at our recent retreat back in January. And if anyone had any questions of Corey, or if Corey, you had any comments, we welcome those.
No, sir, we've made all the correct revisions and modifications from the planning session. That's why that was put forward on the January committee meeting, and the document presented reflects any changes that we've had since that time. So this is the final proposed draft for council's approval.
So, Your Honor, with that being said, I think it's right for a vote on it, and I would move that we approve the Town of Edenton 2023 vision statement.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one question. Would this go on our website, the town website, immediately as the new vision statement?
Will
Yes, that's correct.
these pamphlets be available to everybody, groups, or,
Yeah.
and I know you'll have them at Town Hall for people to pick up and take home?
We'll have a digital copy on the town's website. Any digital copies that are requested, we'll be glad to share with the general public, and we'll have hard copies available by request at Town Hall as
By
well.
request, okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next item, item number 3, is the elected official stipend. Corey and staff had done some research on that and presented that to us at our committee meetings at the end of January. And Corey, I'm going to hand that over to you just to finalize whatever else you have discovered in regard to that, And I think it's also your recommendation that that's right for some type of vote also, is that correct?
It is, and at this point, as far as the last committee meeting and discussions here, we have had conversations with our finance director in-house, and at this time, based on council's recommendation, the administration also recommends that council tables this request and that it is included in our fiscal 23/24 budget.
So will we need a motion to table it until budget discussion?
Yes, sir.
In light of that, I would move that we table this issue until we reach our upcoming budget discussions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm glad because I was against it.
You
Mayor,
got your vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The fourth item that we need to present, Mr. Mayor, is the Public Information Officer job description. And again, this is something that Corey has been working on, and at recent meetings, we discussed the need for a Public Information Officer, and I think we were all in agreement that we would like to move forward with looking into this, including the formation of a job description. So Corey, if you could talk to us about that,
Thank
I'd
you.
appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman High. So the last job description that was brought forth to council during our committee meeting is the final approved draft from the town administration. At this time, I guess there were some questions, and I wanted to provide a point of clarity around the pay range. I think that was part of the discussion this last time. If you notice, I did include 2 individual email copies specific to a public information officer position, one being from Kill Devil Hills as well as from the town of Oak Island. Also included in the handout shows data from the North Carolina League of Municipalities on each of the 3 census ranges from 2,500 to 4,999, from 5,000 to 999, and then also above 10,000. One thing to note here, just wanted to provide some clarity. What we received from the league, none of the locations that were included in this information specifically addresses this title as the Public Information Officer. Each of these ranges that was presented from the league is more for a Public Information Director. Typically that type of position would have some type of individual or employee that would report to them. So that's worth noting here when we consider the salary range for this position. If we look at what Tammy was able to get from the listserv, from the HR listserv, I think this shows more of a range. One from the town of Oak Island, range anywhere from pay grade 26, which for them is $50,889 to $75,925, and from our closest location that we were able to find with this Public Information Officer position was the town of Kill Devil Hills, with a salary range of $41,873 with a max of $64,903. The original recommendation of the town administration, based on the job description that was presented, was pay grade 14. At this time, I think the only item to consider is council's consideration of the data that's presented tonight, as well as where we feel that that should fall into our existing salary range that was provided in the information you have as well. At this time, I do think with some of the conversations that we had previously, that the pay grade 14 does give us the flexibility to work into the experience and doesn't set a precedence for a higher than normal starting salary. But I think there was some concerns around that hiring rate initially, and that's open for discussion tonight. So whatever motion that we present will need to include the approval of the job description as well as council's desired salary range.
Corey, I'm fine with doing, with the job description itself. I just think that it should be moved up to 18. I've done some research as well from Moorhead City, New Bern, and some other areas, coastal areas, and it came back as a salary range of 57, minimum of 57, another one of 60, and it's a few more. So I think 14 is a little bit more, 18 is a little bit more appropriate. That starts off with a minimum of 46. Of course, I'm not looking to go that high as far as 60, but having a dual role as both a public information officer and a clerk, I just feel like it's more appropriate. That's a demanding job in itself, and definitely worthy of at least pay grade 18 as a minimum.
Corey, I think pay grade 18 is more appropriate also. I happen to go along with Councilman Costin on that.
So we're definitely headed towards a dual role.
There were some clerk positions included in that when we think about some of the needs around the public information request for at least establishing the minutes and being able to pull those records that, that we've struggled with over the last 2 years, really to get all those in. And so in addition to the PIO position, having a clerk role, there also is the transparency piece for the public outreach.
Just looking at your pay grade at 18, are all these people who we have listed, titles we have listed here, are these people all supervised people?
Yes.
Your electric
Yes.
line technician,
Yes.
they do? 1, 2, the most, or?
Each one of these would be a supervised position. They directly report to someone higher than them.
No, okay.
It's not over,
No.
we're just able to get a really competent person.
Yeah.
I think we need this.
And one thing to note here, I understand where the group is at for the pay grade 18, but with the right candidate, regardless of the pay grade that's chosen, based on the years of experience and the education and what we provide, there is negotiation,
Okay.
leverage that's built in to these offers.
What's the minimum pay on pay grade 18?
46.
30?
$46,097.
Why don't we just set the minimum pay rate and do like we did for our mayor? As we talk to candidates, those candidates with exceptional qualification and experience, we know that we're going to have to pay them a little more. I don't see any need in jumping the gun before we start interviewing folks and seeing what's going to come across the desk.
And if we had that type of candidate come in and council decided to choose a pay grade 14, and we could adjust the pay scale to match the position that we've done with many other positions when we've had a really strong candidate to
And
come through the door.
remind us and the general public what the range is for pay scale 14.
That's $37,924 as a hiring rate with a maximum of $56,884.
Yeah, I still think it's appropriate to go ahead and bump that up to 18. So if I were to make a motion, it'll be with that amendment to go ahead and bump it up to 18 as a starting for 46.
So at this point, the motion on the floor that will need to be established will be to approve the job description as presented, and then also that motion needs to include the desired pay grade.
Are you making a motion for both?
I'll put that in form of a motion.
Second.
I'd like some more discussion on it. I raised this concern last time, and Corey, I want to ask, after I raise my concern again, I'd like to ask you to clarify something you said. I'm just concerned, I don't know the pool of applicants that we're going to get. And if we get a pool of applicants that, quite frankly, probably should not be in the 46 to 60 range, did you say you still have some authority or flexibility to start them out at a lower rate if we do choose?
No, sir. If we choose to put this pay range as a pay grade 18 versus the 14 that was presented, that would be the minimum hiring rate. If an instance like that would come up and we didn't get the desired candidates with the amount of credentials that we were looking for, what we would do is simply not fill the job.
Are you looking at this as sort of a staff management type person who's not going to have any supervision? He's not going to be supervising anybody, or she.
They would not supervise anyone.
But they would be up there.
They would
and
be a
you're-
direct
They would be
report to me.
supervised by court.
Right,
yes.
right. But they will not be supervising anybody.
No.
Correct.
But I look at this as sort of a staff, definitely a staff person, specialized staff person. And I equate that with somebody with a little bit of management experience who was supervising someone else. I'm just equating that. So that's why I'm looking at 18 too. I think 46 is a safe minimum. I mean,
And it's still lower than what the minimum is for that position, just as a standalone position as a PIO. Again, when we bring on that additional title and those additional responsibilities, certainly it merits to be paid a little bit more. So that's why I'm comfortable.
From a military standpoint, I'm comparing a commissioned officer or a warrant officer here. And they're both very important. They both have, one is more command, the other's more specialty.
Right.
And their salary is pretty darn close, especially warrant officer 1 and a first lieutenant. It's not that much difference.
And I agree with Sam, but I think 46 is going to get us hopefully a more qualified person who has some real skills. This is a tremendous position for us, and I'd like to see us get the best person we can for that.
Me too.
And 46,000 will do better than 37,000, I think.
And Corey, I guess, figure out, I mean, if you don't get a pool of applicants you like, you can come back to us and say, I got these applicants, I want to reduce it down to 40.
And we'll work with you.
And that's correct.
I agree.
That is correct. I mean, that's an option, and if we get the right candidate in the position, once, we've had some time to establish their credentials and making it through the interview process, we can always come back and adjust the pay scale accordingly if we get, a really strong group of candidates here. But from what we had initially looked into and looked at the job descriptions based on some of the folks that were in that role, there were some similarities in what we saw with the administrative specialist position, and that's what initially led us to look into the pay grade 14.
Can I ask a question and maybe direct it to Councilor Austin? Was there any reason why we jumped from 14 to 18? That just seems like a big jump, and I see a lot of salaries in between 14 and 18 that are more palatable to me.
Yes, sir. Only because when I've done the research, and I'll be more than glad to share this with you, it came back as these figures been much higher. I was just sharing them with Councilman Dixon here. Like generally, starting position for a PIO, just a PIO alone, is between 50 and 60 grand. So even coming in at 46 is still low. But again, throwing in that additional responsibility, I just feel like it's more appropriate, that's all. Most of these people, for instance, a mechanic, if we look at 15, we're not asking them to come and do any, do Corey's job or anything like that or fill another role. He's only a mechanic or any other position. So therefore, it's just more appropriate to pay him that. I'm already coming in underneath what the desired salary is.
I'm back to my original question. Why come we guys can't put the ad out at 14? If we get somebody with exceptional qualification, we have the ability to up it to get that person. What's
They'll
the
max out so quick, and then eventually, let's say we get someone with 10 years of experience, they'll max out at the 56 real quick. So there needs to be room for growth to potentially get up to that number. So again,
This will give you more room.
But we're not locked into any pay scale.
no?
No.
That's my concern. We've never had this position before. I feel like we can more than keep this person busy. I think, I'm pretty sure, based on our prior hiring practices, we're going to hire somebody good for the job. But if we've got somebody that maxes out fairly quickly and we want to keep them, there's nothing to prevent us from changing the pay scale.
And we made those same type of adjustments when we revisited the last few years' worth of increases for established positions, and that is correct.
the initial offer versus where they would end up in 20 years, that's something that can be adjusted. We've had to do that for some of our director positions for the department heads in the past, where someone came in as a strong candidate, they were given the initial pay that represented their background, and as an individual got closer to that max, we've been able to change the pay grades to continue to appreciate our employees as they get years of service. I think you bring up a good point, Councilman High, with the fact that if you notice in the packet, we didn't get anything from the North Carolina League of Municipalities that showed a public information officer. These are director positions that we were able to get the data from, and from the outreach we had for the HR listserv, there were only 2 towns that we got anything back from that actually had the specific officer position as a job within their municipal organization.
So would this be would this be advertised without a salary?
No.
But once you advertise a salary, you really reduce who might be applying for the job. If you do the 37.5 or whatever.
You'd have to show the range, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
And then again, I'll be more than glad to share with council the information that I found. I actually called 6 surrounding towns, and I was able to provide, get information as it relates to this specific position. Most of them include both a PIO position as well as an administrative assistant clerk, and they all come in about that same range. So I'll send that email out to council as well, but I stick by the original motion.
There is a motion and a second on
Okay,
the floor.
motion and second.
I got one more question for you. Do you come back to us and tell us you've got 2 or 3 good candidates and this is what their salary requirements are? How does that work from a practical standpoint?
I think for now, for starting salary, I think the conversation that would be had is we were able to acquire someone because of the negotiation range that was there for at least a starting salary, and that what we would discuss would be in 6 months or 12 months that we would need to adjust the range accordingly if we got that, really good candidate in that we wanted to make that job offer to.
But I guess my question is, with it being a new position, will that come to us, the actual salary, or do you make that decision?
I would make that decision.
This person reporting directly to you.
Yes.
Do we have money in the fiscal year budget for that, or we're gonna have to wait till June?
No, this position, if approved tonight with the correct pay range, would be posted tomorrow. So we would go ahead and start recruiting for that, so yes, we do.
Will we have to have a budget amendment for it, or is that money already?
Money's already there?
Yes.
That's good.
There'd be no budget amendment for
That's good to
this.
hear, okay.
For that full range of salary?
Yes,
That includes the other benefits to the,
yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
No.
All right, we have 2,
I think it's 4 to 2.
4 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That being said, the motion carried.
Mayor, the last matter that our committee has is the Old National Guard Armory termination of reversion agreement. Council may recall that 15 or so years ago, the town was the owner of the old armory up on Broad Street, just to the left of the tennis courts. And we transferred that to the Board of Education, and that particular deed that transferred the armory to the Board of Education had a reversion agreement that stated if the property is ever not used for school purposes, that title to the property would revert back to the town. As the school board and the county began looking at financing options for the new high school, they are going through a USDA program, and USDA in the title search and chain of title that was reported to them noticed that the deed that was going from the school board to the county still included, as it should, that right of reversion. USDA declined to accept that as part of the required collateral and requested that reversion language be removed. We discussed this at our last meeting, and there was some concern about that being removed, and we had discussion about it. We directed Corey to talk with the county and also talk to the school board about what could be done about that. And I think our primary concern was it did not want it to be a situation where that armory could be demolished, among other concerns. But Corey, if you can update us on the status of discussions on the termination of that reversion agreement.
I did.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman High. So that is correct. Initially, the initial reverter clause was something that needed to be revised. We have since our committee meeting received a revised termination, revised version of the termination of reverter and the declaration of protective covenants from Hood. The county manager and I met Monday to go through the document. What was presented tonight does meet the county needs. Included in that conversation was also the school superintendent representing the Edenton public school system. There were just some minor tweaks that needed to be made in some of the Exhibit B items that were presented. I did not receive an updated version quick enough to share that with council tonight. I did get that version back just before the meeting from the town attorney. And so for tonight's action, what we would request is now that the county, the school system, as well as the town has sat down and worked through this document to grant myself and the mayor the position or the approval to sign the document that we just recently received only minutes before this meeting tonight with the county and the school system. When I talk about some of the reversions, there was some language in here that needed to specifically be cleaned up to include the Board of Education, whereas the county would revert the property back to the Board of Education after the loan had been satisfied from USDA on the county's behalf. And so these were just simply some clerical errors or clerical improvements that needed to be added to this Exhibit B. So the request for me would be to give me the approval to continue to work with Hood, the county, as well as the superintendent to sign the document once we've received our attorney's blessing. When I think we're at that point, those revisions were provided, and I'll be glad to share the newest version of the document with council first thing in the morning.
And the newest version is one that was approved by our attorney or drafted by our attorney?
Yes, that's correct. It was not in time to be able to include it for tonight's meeting. But we do feel like, I'm confident that we have the document that satisfies all three parties, the county, the Board of Education, as well as the town.
And Corey, just thinking out loud, I'm trying to think if I need to recuse myself or ask to be recused from the vote. I am the attorney for the school board. I'm not sure. This is more a benefit to the town and not the school board. And the county and Dr. Sasser have indicated their agreement with this document. I just wanted to put that on the record. What I would be voting for benefits the town and not benefits the school board. So I don't think I've got any sort of conflict, but I did want to put that on the record. And now that I go through my thought process out loud with you guys, I don't think I'm going to make a motion to recuse myself.
And I think when we originally did this agreement to transfer the building, the version, I think, was an attempt to make sure the building wasn't ever coming down. And I think this goes a long way, it just does that. I feel totally confident. I've talked to Hood several times about it, shared ideas. So I think it's a good agreement. It's really a better position for us to be in anyway. It's stronger.
And USDA's requirement was just that language be removed, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. With that being said, I would move that we provide the mayor and Corey Gooden as town manager the authority to move forward with the execution of the agreement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor Stallings, that concludes the administrative committee reports, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you very much. The next is our finance committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon.
So we have two quick things. First is a budget amendment for the American Rescue Plan. And, Corey, do we need to talk about it anymore? It's just moving money from one place to another.
That's
We'll
correct.
discuss it sometime. So I'll put that in the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And then the second thing, do we need to even have this since we didn't?
Yes, so one thing to note here for the budget amendment, we had grouped the elected official salary and travel expenses as one motion to clear up those line items. The motion tonight will need to be to approve the budget amendment to only accommodate the travel expenses. And this is for our travel arrangements for the National Main Street visit, but it does not include the elected official stipend.
I'll put that in form of a motion then.
Second.
Any further discussion? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That's all the finance committee has.
Okay, and the next is our Public Works Committee, and that is chaired by
Mayor, we only have one item tonight,
Okay.
and it has to do with no parking designation. Mayor, as I discussed at the January 23rd committee meeting, the resident living at 106 South Oakham Street, which is located next door to Down East Preservation Business, is very concerned about citizens constantly parking their cars in front of his driveway, thereby blocking the resident's entrance and exit to his private driveway. With that said, I make a motion the Town Public Works Department install a no parking designation stencil on the street in front of his driveway. This has already been pre-approved by David Myers, Public Works Director. So I made the motion.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and that concludes our committee reports. And the next item is our budget amendment for Department of Commerce Building Reuse Grant Regulator Marine, and I'll ask Corey if he will too.
Thank you, Mayor. So the budget amendment tonight, Virginia has worked very hard to get all this lined up so we can actually accept the reimbursement funds from the Department of Commerce. We're very pleased to announce that the regulator group was able to complete the construction of their addition for their whole storage unit, as well as meet the job requirements that were a part of the grant agreement with the Department of Commerce. This budget amendment will reimburse Regulator Marine for $200,000 towards the building reuse program that they were a part of. We're very proud to see another one of our local businesses doing an outstanding job working with the town, working with the state to try to find opportunities for job creation. And for us to have just approved the initial agreement in early spring of 2022 and to be at the point of meeting the job requirements as well as the construction requirements here in early 2023, that's quite the accomplishment. So I'm very proud to deliver this check to the folks at Regulator sometime next week.
We make a special presentation, or?
Yes.
Good.
I already spoken with Joan with Regulator. They're actually in a boat show in Miami this week, so we were planning on doing that tomorrow. They will actually be back sometime next week or near the weekend, and we plan to schedule opportunity sometime next week to present that to them.
We're so lucky to have them in this community.
We are.
I mean, all all the people they employ and all the good things they do for our community.
Virginia, do you
Faith-based
remember
company.
the number of jobs that were created with this position by chance for the regulator?
What was the question?
So, anyways, I'll be glad to provide an update. I think it was in the 20s is what the job requirements were. I think it was 25. I don't remember specifically at this moment. But we do recommend.
25.
Yeah, 25 was the number.
That's right.
So,
25.
25 newly created jobs for that site. So we do recommend that council approve the budget amendment as presented.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion opposed? Motion carried. Okay. All right, Corey, then the next one is a wastewater treatment plant upgrade, phase 1, and Corey, we'll ask you to take that.
Thank you, Mayor. On January 31st, the town of Edenton, as well as the Wooten Company, as well as the USDA reps, hosted our bid opening for the 2018 wastewater treatment plant phase 1 project. If you remember, within the last couple of years, that project was originally a two-part project that was included as one payment scope. We have broken that into two different projects, one for the renovation of the existing site, and the second phase of that project is the expansion piece, which we're continuing to work on. We did receive 3 bids for phase 1. At this time, these improvements would be replace the mechanical equipment at the wastewater treatment plant, as well as add the SCADA system to increase any efficiencies that we may see there, as well as remove the overgrown trees. At this time, we had to rebid, and on January 31st, we did receive the 3 bids that are required for this type of project. The initial low bidder for this project is Peters & White Construction Company, with a base bid of $13.3 million, $300,606. This low bid was an exceedance of the previously procured
Is
funding.
inflation in place?
This is inflation. This is also supply chain costs that we're seeing, and also this is an indication of labor shortages within our contractors. Knowing that the initial project ranged around $5.8 million, the base bid for this project received just for the renovations of that $13.3 million was roughly $8.8 million. At this time, what the recommendation is, this is simply an update. This was originally slated to be approved by council so we could get on the LGC schedule in April to meet the time period that we want. Right now, myself as well as the USDA representative and the Wooten Company are working, and the recommendations is to continue working with Peters & White to negotiate, one, the pricing associated with the jobs that are here, as well as to continue negotiating with USDA. Their original funding was roughly $1.8 to $1.9 million in grant and roughly $3.3 or $3.5 million in loan. In the conversations that we've had with USDA, they're going to approach their representatives to see about revising the funding packet at this time. We're very optimistic to get a revised funding packet that would show potentially more grant funding including with this. We stress the importance to USDA for us being a vulnerable utility, and that we had received state funding on some of our other projects that came in higher than normal. So Monica with USDA, she's going to come back to us and to see what USDA's second finance packet will be. And at that time, we would recommend the financing requirements as well as the contractor. We're also trying to have those negotiations with the contractor to try to revise the scope of work in light of the difference from the initial 2018 pricing to get a more reasonable price.
And that's a
Yes.
double price.
Corey,
why
what
don't
are the alternates that are listed along there? I mean, that's such a variance between
It is.
the
There-
bids on those things.
There are, so when we talk about the total low bid price of 13.3, that includes the base price plus the 5 alternates that were added. We knew the pricing was going to come in high. That's why we established the initial base bid being to renovate the existing spray field site. When we consider the alternates, we think about the removal of the trees. We think about the soil grub and grading. We think about the water prevention, the fencing, everything that needs to be added that is a part of the project but doesn't have to be reflected in that base bid. The base bid says you're going to fix these items that are associated with the plant that are part of the operation. The additional add-ons that you see is everything else that's really required to meet what the state is asking of us.
Once those trees are gone, is that you do have a straw base over the ground, or is the ground just
So
empty of trees?
we're going to remove the trees. The goal for the state is to work towards a grass/hay operation that would allow plenty of sunlight. If you notice, the majority of the cost coming from this is the tree removal as well as the grading work that's needed. When you look at some of the alternates, we've proposed some other options to the state to see if they would consider those, at which they have. Then when we talk about negotiations with Peter and White versus removing the trees from your typical logging operation, we've shared with them to rebid these alternates more of a mulching operation that wouldn't include the soil and grading, that wouldn't include some of the soil and erosion piece that a logging operation would. So that's a long story to say that we're still negotiating this, and hopefully we will have these negotiations final by our February 27th meeting with USDA, with Peters and White. That will allow us to stay on schedule for the SOC that we are under for our wastewater plant.
What is the timeline for phase one? What are you looking at?
We're shooting for a June or July construction start date.
Okay. End date? What about an end date for phase one?
Right now, we think that if we can get Peters and White to accept the alternative that we've presented for logging,
Right.
The tree removal piece could happen fairly quick. We've received some initial subcontractor quotes around more of a forestry mulching operation that could be done in 6 weeks, separate from the plant renovations. The plant renovations are likely going to take at least a year, if not 18 months.
Gotcha.
Because the challenge for us is that we will continue to operate that site while existing spray zones would not be in operation for 2 reasons. One, they're being dried to prep for whatever work that's being done, or they're being worked in. So, you know, when we start this process, getting the trees out is going to be cumbersome, but it can happen a lot quicker if we didn't have to juggle so many of the zones that we have.
And Corey, can you talk to the general public about what SOC means and the significance of that?
And so the town is under a sewer moratorium from the state. What that means is that there were some issues with our existing permit where there was some pooling that they had concerns about. If you remember, we have completed 1 phase of some of our in-town renovations that were the I&I project most recently, as well as a second round that's on its way. This was really the first opportunity for us to start addressing some of the concerns of the pooling as a permit violation for the state. We've had very good luck with the initial projects that we've done in town. We're very close to meeting some of the requirements that the state would like to see before we even start the renovation of the plant. So for us, you know, this is a chance to attack, that's not a correct word, to go
approach.
after some of the concerns that the state had and to really remedy those.
Gotcha.
I hope that
Yeah,
provides some
Yes.
information.
thank you.
Is most of that grant funded though? Is that what we got the grant for? Like the big grants,
So there, some of the phase one I&I work, which is already completed, was funded through your typical state revolving loan fund. And then we talk about phase two, if you remember, back in April of this year, that was switched to the American Relief Funds for the phase two work. That's 100% grant. The project here will be a portion grant funded through USDA and then a portion loan. We're hoping that they start their conversations going after the grant piece first rather than the loan piece, because, you know, for us, and I made this clear to them, for us to do an initial base bid project of $8.8 million, that's not going to happen right now. That's not something that we can entirely bite on our own. So I would like to provide we will provide an official recommendation and do everything that we need to meet the LGC requirements at our next meeting on the 27th.
27th.
But this was an update because it was supposed to be a bid recommendation.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah,
You've done a great
thank you.
job.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate your knowledge on this too. It's amazing.
Thanks.
Any further questions to Corey on this? All right, that ends our new business, and the next item on the agenda is our items that are considered timely and important. So, does anybody up here have anything that, okay?
Mayor, I'd like to take a few minutes to bring you up to date and the council up to date on the work of the Mayor's Task Force on litter prevention, recycling, and the environment. A couple items. First, let me introduce Dave Herlong, who's the co-chairperson for the task force, along with Trish Rand, and we have Susan Ingalls here also tonight. I don't know if we have any other members, but the committee would like to thank the council for setting aside the $40,000 to match a state grant that will allow us to purchase a storage container that then will allow us to begin curbside recycling. We're hoping that this will start up again sometime in October if all these fall together, but we're in good shape for doing that. I'd like to bring up day two on litter prevention. The task force has looked at this, and we would like to recommend that either a group be formed like the community ambassadors, or that additional staff be hired for the landscaping department, and that we dedicate paid time for about 12 hours worth of work a weekend on picking up litter at one of the highway intersections. This would allow us for less than $12,000 a year to at least once a month, if not more often, clean up the intersection, and it would work well with other volunteer groups that are helping us do that. So, want to ask you to consider $10,000 to $12,000 being spent to allow us to bring in some paid assistance to make sure those intersections are clean. This may be short-term, and maybe volunteers can handle it in the long run, but we've got a problem that's massive, and we're not going to be able to solve it with volunteer help at this point. So that's one of the requests that the task force would like to have you consider. Also, we have a cleanup day on Saturday, March the 4th from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. We'll meet at the parking lot on Park Street behind the Armory. We're asking civic clubs, youth groups, businesses, individuals to meet at 8:30, and then we'll have the directions and supplies. This cleanup will focus a lot on north-south streets in Edenton. Old Hereford, Coke, not so much Oakham,
So
North Broad.
you're not getting that on the interchanges with this particular.
Some might get to the intersection, but we'll see how many people we have. But there's a regular cleanup, particularly on Coke and Old Hereford, and North Broad and North Granville. So that'll take place on the 4th of the next month. We had a very successful event a few months ago, and we expect to do this every 3 or 4 months.
What time was that, Roger? What time was that meeting?
Pardon?
What time was that?
Meet at 8:30, and we'll 9 to 11. It'll be about a 2-hour period of cleanup.
This is behind the firehouse, fire department.
Mhm. The one other thing, the Susan Ingalls, Alto Lecomte, have been working on with local businesses to help them reduce use of plastics, and this is plastics that can't be recycled. They've been very successful in this, and we'll be giving you more information on this program in the future. I want you to understand we're working hard, and we take the litter problem seriously. We're looking for curbside recycling to start in the fall, and to get the community more involved in addressing these issues. So thank you, Mayor, for setting this up and allowing us to do this.
Mayor Stallings, first of all, thank you, Roger. And I don't know if there's any cause and effect here, but it seems to me that the interchanges are looking a little bit better than they have.
Someone has been doing some work out there.
And I've noticed that there are a couple of signs that have been placed announcing a $1,000 fine, if I'm not mistaken. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing, and would maybe ask Corey to look at some of the recommendations that Roger's group had made, and at the appropriate time put those on for committee discussion, because I think we're making some progress. So I really appreciate
It does
that.
look better.
And then I'm sure on everybody's mind, including all of us, but Corey, if you can give us some sort of update on any progress or any discussions with the ownership group at Saga on Hotel Hinton.
Thank you, Councilman Hyde. Yes, I can do that. As discussed at our last meeting, our initial date was pushed back because of COVID and some concerns with the group. We did meet that following Monday as requested, once everyone was clear to kind of be around each other. At that time, we expressed some of the concerns from the general public about the security and the safety of the location. At that time, we did identify lighting opportunities that the town could assist with for street lighting that was there, that we were able to actually get up within the next 3 business days. We also entered the property with representatives and walked through some of the electrical concerns that they had, as well as us, as far as getting electric to the building for more lighting that's needed along the front section along King Street, closest to where town utility services could not tie into anything. We've had conversations with them since. They're working with local contractor here to go ahead and get whatever electrical improvements needed, interior, basically past the meter on their side, to be able to get electricity to those additional locations. We also had a meeting today with the representatives of Saga this afternoon, actually, and we talked with them, as well as the folks from Preservation North Carolina, as well as Irvin Henderson, who is helping them with the project. At that time, we all shared concerns and updates from each other's group. They are still actively pursuing this project. At this time, Saga feels like they will know really the status of what they can do for the hotel as a hotel. I would say within the next 120 days, we should really know where Saga stands. But we did go ahead and make some further requests. That the location be clean, that the location be additional security added. Mr. Henderson made some recommendations about some other historic properties that they have done something similar to. I have a follow-up call with the specifics from Saga as who they have found to do the work. And just a note, I did bring my notes with me tonight. One of the things that we did share and did get a commitment from all parties that were on the group is that we did need to host some type of public meeting from Preservation North Carolina as well as Saga They did agree to that. That date is to be determined at this point. Also, to work with the local contractor and let us know who that is for the electrical, because we will not install a meter base on that property until some of the concerns we had are addressed. Also, as well as some silk screening to show some of the renderings and updates, as well as cleaning around the property. I have a follow-up call in the morning with Bob from Saga to find out
That's
who
Hauser?
they've been in
That's
contact
Hauser.
in contact with. I asked that the perimeter of the building needed to be cleaned. We needed to identify who the electrical contractor was and identify where the additional lighting needed to be for the interior as well as the exterior. And also, quite frankly, we want to see the place cleaned up. I said if this was a residential structure that we had in a historic district or a business any other business we would have these same conversations with them. I said, so it is time for us to have that
How was their
conversation.
attitude with you? Were they positive? Did they?
They understood that they had some improvements they needed to make, and for them to commit with the public meeting, I thought that was huge.
Yeah.
And I did want to share that tonight, and as soon as I get those dates, I'll be glad to share with the general public as well as the council. I think the right people will be in place to ask the right questions at that time. They did commit to that.
So they're asking for 120 days to give them to figure out what they want to do with it.
At this point, yes.
Corey, on these short-term issues that you just discussed, is it too much to ask of staff and also them to let them know that the public and those of us here at the table are going to expect this to be discussed at every meeting until they're addressed, and continue to have meetings with them and continue to have monthly updates for us and the public?
I think that's very appropriate.
I guess what we're talking about in the meantime, is there something we can do, the town can do to get things moving?
Well, we've asked our town attorney, we're waiting on that, to give us a list of everything that we can do legally to hold their feet to the fire.
Okay.
I mean, because a lot of things we can't do. I mean, it's private property, and so there are some things you cannot do. And, the agreement, the preservation agreement is between Preservation North Carolina and Saga.
Yeah.
We're not a party to that. Now, we can push which I think we ought to, push as hard as we can to make sure that they're trying to fulfill that, but they just, we haven't seen any sign of that.
Yeah.
But this been going on for 9 years
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
That's right.
So we think in 120 days
Yeah.
they're gonna do something
I agree.
remarkable?
I think we'll know, and the biggest thing from the discussions that we had today, they will have what approval that they need for their packet. They shared, as well as the folks from PNC, as well as Mr. Henderson shared, that any individual that would attempt to restore this type of project would have to go through some of the same state historic preservation conversations to even consider the project themselves. They feel like they're more closer to the starting line in that 120 days versus the finish line. And for them, I think that getting the property secured and getting the lighting is something they want us to show, to ask for at least support for that 90 to 120 days.
How soon will we have that information back from HUD on exactly what we could do?
I mean, as soon as we can get him something over there that shows that, and we did request some documents from PNC today about some of those
Well,
agreements.
and what they're trying to get is something called new market credits, and that's something you apply for, and that's why they had Irv Henderson on the phone. And either they get them. I think either you get them or you don't, and that's the 120-day window. The preservation piece of it is the historic tax credits. You do the work like they want you to do it, you get those. But the new market credits, you have to apply through an agency that doles them out, and you have to get them. And I think that I guess they're trying. I don't know that, but that's what Irv Henderson does.
And that's what they shared today, that they felt like they would have an idea of how the new market tax credits would be awarded for that within that 120-day period.
They do realize how frustrated we are here.
And I reminded them of that, yes.
Okay.
And Councilman Dixon, Irv Henderson, he's a known entity, known
Yeah,
expert in this
He is
field.
Henderson and Company. He's from Henderson. He's on the National Main Street Board. He's been, I mean,
So he's legit.
a leader in that field.
Nationwide.
Nationwide, yeah. I mean, there's no question about that. And he was here one time trying to set up a CDC for us, which for various reasons we didn't do, but at some point we might want to take a look at that too. But I think we need to be ready with everything we can do to push them to do something during this period. We just need to know what we can do. You know, what are the things you can do? Can you condemn for a public purpose of economic development? That's a hood question. You know, I think I know the answer, but I mean, you know, what can we do as a community? How can we enforce our ordinances or pass ordinances to the fullest extent of the law to make them do what we want them to do?
And I couldn't agree more. And the things that I'm looking for the big items like Sambo's talking about. I'm looking for a start date like you're talking about. But I'm also looking at some short-term good faith efforts. I want to see some good faith effort. And some of the things that we proposed, to me and these people sitting out here, are fairly easy to do.
Yes.
And I want to
Yes.
see that taken care of.
And those were clearly identified on the call this afternoon, and we do have that follow-up call first thing in the morning, and that is where Bob and I will discuss what those short-term fixes are, what we want. We made recommendation, and I let them know that, you know, this is in our town. This is not in Henderson. This is not in Raleigh, and this is not at the beach. This is in Edenton.
And you will
So we
continue
see
to
it
hold their
here.
feet to the fire.
Yes.
And I assure you,
Yes.
Corey has not been very passive with
I
them.
don't think he has either.
He's,
I know.
I've said it on some of those meetings
Okay.
that he's
Good to
held
hear.
their feet
Good
to
to
the
hear.
fire, so.
And
Good.
so my goal in that time period, as they work towards this 120-day window for them for their starting line, is to continue to get clarity from the town attorney on what we can't do when we get to that 120-day mark. And then also continue to approach them on, these are the known issues that we need to see corrected, you know, within the next 30 days.
Good.
And so that plan is to run parallel with their 120-day plan.
Sambo, they bought the hotel in Elizabeth City. Have they done any work on that?
No,
Same problem.
Nope.
And did they do anything with the property that they bought on the beach?
I think they've been.
Yeah, I think they've been active at the beach, but not in Elizabeth City. Elizabeth City, I think,
Yeah.
going through the same thing we are.
If they do decide to put it on the market, I hope that, you know, the citizens group, we have a great history of buying things. So, I mean, you know, we got the Cupola House, the Barker House, the Pembroke Hall, I mean, all of these, the Taylor Theater, I mean, they were all community-led initiatives. And maybe that's the, you know, if it does get
May
ready
go
to
to
be
that.
sold, you know, maybe, you know, this group can help lead that effort to raise the funds to then purchase it, to figure out what to do.
Gotcha. Thank you for what you're doing, Corey. Just hold them to the fire.
Okay, anything else up here?
Yeah, Corey, did we get the lights in the park?
Not yet. I'm still working with Mike. Those are in. I don't know why they haven't gotten to them yet, but no, they're not installed.
Which park is that here?
It was Oakham and Freemason. I thought they were gonna get to it in January.
They have not
Is
gotten to
is
it
that the
yet.
Griffith Park?
Yes, Griffith
Okay.
Park.
Not at this time, and I'll find out why.
Is the police chief
Is that-
here?
Is that with the electric department that you have to
Yes.
schedule?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, why don't, I mean, if they're in, why don't we tell them that we're expecting those to be up by our next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. That's fine.
Is the police chief here? Huh? He's not, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say this anyway. At a town meeting that we had last Thursday night, there were several unfortunate remarks that were made to and about our police chief. And I have spoken to Chief King to ensure him our full support and offer regret over some of the comments that was made. Now, it is most appropriate that I make these assurances to him publicly. And the chief has our full support and our gratitude for the job that he's doing. We will continue to seek ways to provide his department with the manpower and the tools to find answers to the violence. And at this time, I would like to thank Reverend Shannon, who's back in the back, for his participation in the meeting, and to Shalom Church, the Reverends Downing, for their allowing us to use their facilities. And they have a very nice facility, and we enjoyed using it. So I just felt like that this was something that needed to be said, because there were some derogatory comments made about our chief, and I realize we got some people that don't like him, and that's their personal problems. But anyway, so at this time, if there's nothing else up here, I'll open it up for public comment, and keep in mind that you're allowed 3 minutes, and we will. So the first one on our list is Jesse Rivers.
Thank you for bringing that up. Dan, I appreciate that.
Council and general public. I wanted to tell you that I personally experienced a loss by murder in my family less than 5 years ago. My nephew was murdered, and about a year or so ago, I became aware of the Marcus Jackson project. That lady, Marcus Jackson was a young African-American man who was murdered. Anyway, I'm making that backstory a little, I want to shorten it, but I just want you to know that I participated in a Zoom call. I was only a Caucasian person. They were all mothers. I'm an aunt or aunt in this situation, but it was heartbreaking with the emotions and things that the mothers are experiencing with the loss of their child due to gun violence. So when I heard about a meeting that was held last night hosted at Reverend Shannon's church by the Marcus Jackson Project, I immediately went. I've supported their fundraising, etc. Okay, and then I learned, and I am going to complete this, that Marcus Jackson Project is conducting a survey, community survey, due the 1st of April about community safety and well-being. And now I want to conclude. I'm just giving you some backstory, but I've been a member, as some of you already know, of the Racial Reconciliation Group for well over 10 years. I am a member of the Move the Monument group for 2 years. And the Move the Monument group, we've been meeting every Saturday at the monument. And as you may know, we're a group, we want it moved, we don't want it destroyed or defaced, we just want it moved. And there's a group that wants it to stay just where it is. Everybody should know about these facts. But I want you to know that it's not really violence, but the unrest associated with being at the statue has gotten worse. 3 weeks ago, we were interrupted by a deafening sound of a metal shovel being dragged across Broad Street and then up and down the sidewalks. A citizen who was not even a member of either group, any group, stopped her car and insisted on calling the police. They came. Last week, or week before last, the statue was defaced by somebody spreading glue where we have been sitting. So please consider what's going on with violence and whatever in our group.
Okay, the next is Lori Dablow.
Happy Valentine's Day. Corey, that was a great Valentine. It was one of the nicest Valentines I've received, other than my husband's today. It was wonderful news. I just wanted to share some thoughts tonight, and I think we're all on the same page here. So really, who I'd like to speak to is Saga, and I am delighted that we're going to have the opportunity in a public forum with PNC present as well. Recently, I think we all were so honored to read that Travel and Leisure magazine published an article on January 29th of 2023, the 20 most beautiful small towns in the U.S. I'm going to quote, "Where to begin? Perhaps the postcard-perfect 1886 Roanoke River Lighthouse, the Georgian architecture of the 1767 courthouse, tree-lined streets and gardens throughout the town, harbor views with moss-draped bald cypress trees. Colonial-era Edenton is as steeped in history as it is stunning. For all of its head-turning beauty, Edenton is anything but prim and proper," said Whit Tuttle, executive director of Visit North Carolina. "The town has spirit. You'll find it reflected in the lively shops and restaurants and the stories of the people who perpetuate Edenton's unending appeal." As a relatively recent resident, be 3 years in March, I would like to add another observation to that highly insightful review of our amazing town. Edenton is one of those rare places in the world where a building is not just a building, especially if it's a historic building. It's as if the many historic homes and public places have a persona of their own, and with good reason. These are the places that our earliest Americans lived and loved, worked and sacrificed, and faced hardships much worse than the COVID pandemic. The American freedom-loving spirit was literally born in the earliest residents that lived in many of the houses and public places in this town. In Edenton, a building is not just a building. The time has come to help Saga understand that the Hotel Hinton is not merely one of its many acquisitions, that its worth can't be simply measured in the tax abatement benefits that it presumably provides to that developer. Because here in Edenton, the Hotel Hinton is not just a building. It's time for Saga to act in good faith on their contractual obligation with the Historic Preservation Foundation of North Carolina and rehabilitate the Hotel Hinton according to the covenants of the deed of sale, or step aside and let somebody else with a fresh vision and the necessary resources begin restoring that hotel to its former grace and dignity. Because in Edenton, a building is not a building. I'll hurry. Now is the time for Edenton's residents and elected leaders to stand firmly behind PNC's current efforts to make this unacceptable situation right, and for us to provide our unified support for that nonprofit organization. And finally, I would suggest to Saga that if you had any preconceptions of Edenton as a place where money could convince people to turn a blind eye to the kind of neglect and abuse that's been inflicted on our historic Hotel Hinton, you have seriously misjudged our town. Because in Edenton, a building is not just a building.
And Ms. Dablow, we could not agree with you more. Okay, the next is Adrian Heath.
Good evening. I wasn't going to speak, but what the lady just said triggered something in me to say something. Even though Edenton has been recognized as the prettiest town, one of the prettiest towns in the South, and a building isn't just a building, we have to look at the monument. As the advertisement or the advocacy advertisement in the newspaper states, why should the prettiest town in one of the prettiest towns in the South want to revere the monument as the Confederate monument as a racist reminder of the past? It's a shame. It's a shame that such a beautiful town can adjust to the 21st century and put the monument not center but somewhere else. Make that square be a place of beauty, peace, and goodwill for all citizens of the town. So that's one thing. Second thing, very quickly, is North Edenton. You mentioned, Mr. Dixon, about real estate and buying. I wonder when you're going to, or someone will buy that blight of a mall in the north. We really need that taken care of. Either the city needs to buy it, make it into recreation for youth or nonprofits, or some rich guys in town can get together and purchase it or level it, turn it into a field or a garden or a park. Something needs to be done with that blight. The north needs help with blight beautification projects. I'm glad to know that the mayor's group will be doing some pickup. I will join. I will join you, Susan. And thirdly, I wonder if we're reinforcing or enforcing the ordinance about garbage and things being piled up in yards in the north. I notice in the north of Edenton, there's some abandoned cars. There are broken buildings that are left astray in yards, rented. We know that some landlords don't really care what their homes look like because they maybe don't care about the residents in the home. But I know even if a resident doesn't ask you to move the garbage on the property, we should have movement of abandoned cars and broken buildings and garbage and building products, building items, and removal of tires, because tires cause, when it rains, insects and things can live in them. So let's really consider North Edenton seriously, not pushing the people out who rent, not pushing the people out who own homes, but helping them uplift themselves by making it more attractive for all people and not just beauty downtown Edenton for the rich. Thank you.
And Ms. Heath, I will assure you that there are some things going on with the shopping center that you probably don't know about. Corey and I have met with the bank that owns that shopping center 2 or 3 different times, and there is some work being done on it, but.
You can't say, is it,
I'm sorry?
can you not say what it is? Or
No,
we're
cannot.
flying in the dark?
Not at this time. We're not able to do that at this time. Would you agree?
No, for what
Yeah.
we're doing with that.
All right, next on the list is John Bittner.
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, I'm at a disadvantage tonight because on Valentine's Day, the prior speakers have all been 3 roses, and now we have the thorn. But I wish to commend council for the council meeting that was held this past Thursday night on North Broad at the Shalom Church. A lot was done very well. There were a couple of folks who made very unfortunate and irresponsible remarks, and I hope that will not tarnish or limit us going forward. But my main concern tonight is, since then, I mentioned that night the need for better light. And since then, every time I go down any street in this community, I find more telephone poles without a light than I do those with a light. So half of the remedy is right there. The poles are up. I suggest that council do a thorough assessment of how many lights and where. What level of lumens needs to be developed going forward to maximize safety and the perception of safety. This is doable. And I think you could reflect good thought on this when you do your budget for the coming year. And I think there's room there for individual people, perhaps clubs, perhaps other groups, to say, okay, I'll support a pole or 2 or 3 poles. And can you put it on this street or that location or whatever else? In other words, We want public participation to clean up the entrances and exits of Edenton. Why not invite public participation to include and expand the level of light at night in all different sections of our community? It would have a tremendously positive effect. And I'm thinking of the contrast between where I happen to live on West Queen, across from Morgan Park, at where Ms. Heath's talking about, in the neighborhood off of Parkin Avenue, just north of Holmes High School. There's going to be a major renovation there. But the light level in that whole residential area north of Park Avenue needs to be increased, improved, and all the peripheral benefits that will come to the school and to our community. That level of light is enhanced beyond what it is now. So I urge you, I implore you, this is worthy of your best efforts, and it will benefit all of us. And it will benefit all of us short term. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, and the next is John Caramont. I can't. Lives on 412 East Queen Street.
John Grant.
Correct. I'm sorry.
Good evening. I just want to do a few follow-up questions in regards to the meeting you had. When you all actually toured the building, did you go past the first floor of the Hinton? Okay. And was the fire inspector and anybody from the police department present, the building inspector as well?
No, the elected director, myself, as well as representatives from SOC were there, but we went through all 4 floors.
Okay. And any indication of, there was indication at the last meeting that there was possible tagging going on, or did you witness any of that when you toured the building?
There were some curious marks at 1 or 2 places near the door that looked more along the lines of children, but as far as on the interior of the building, the majority of what's there has been removed.
All right. And the 120 days that they expressed, is that a limit that you all put on them as well?
No, that was an ask specifically from SOC.
Okay. And you are speaking with the city attorney tonight, correct, in regards to a different matter?
Yes.
Could you also express your concern as to whether or not any action be taken based on state or city ordinances in regards to the building to put added pressure on Saga?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And I was unable to be at the meeting the other day in regards to the violence that sprung up again. I just want to express some concern over some remarks that were made at the meeting in regards to targeting individuals with a letter. I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years. I don't think it's the best idea to let people know you're looking at them, and that's the kind of letter that just gives them more credibility within their own type of community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's the last one that we had on our list to speak. And at this time, we're going to go into closed session with our attorney. And have a motion to go in closed session.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, you got time?
Saying aye? Aye. Opposed?
Yeah, I've got it. Oh, you